Yeah, it's just pretty weird. It looks like there's thousands and thousands of raindrops in front of me.
Oh, no.
It just happened. I was out going for a hike this morning, and then it's about mile and a half in, all of a sudden, like there's all kinds of like weird things waving before my eye, like spot, like snakes in my eye or something. So I got to go. I'm leaving early. I got to go see an eye doctor about this.
Okay. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Should we call the meeting to order?
Yeah, Sam is just joining us and Aaron, so we have more than a quorum with Aaron, and hopefully Kelly will get to join us.
So welcome, everybody. I'd like to call the June 14th meeting to order. Cassie, is there anybody in the chat room?
No, we have nobody in the chat room.
That's great. So to start the meeting, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Dale,
Present?
John,
Here?
Margie,
Here.
Aaron,
Here.
Charles,
Here.
Kelly, Sam.
Here.
Thank you, everybody. The next agenda item is to approve the minutes. Let's approve the minutes separately. So the first set of minutes is May 10th, 2022.
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments, changes, or additions or deletions? Hearing none. Cassie, let's call the roll vote, please.
Dale,
Yay.
John,
Yes.
Margie,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Sam.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's do the May 12th minutes. Any additions? Could I give a motion to approve? Need a motion, please.
I motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additions, corrections to the May 12th meeting minutes? Hearing none, let's do a roll call, please.
Dale,
Yay.
John,
Yes.
Margie,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Sam.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much. Are there any announcements from the board or staff?
I have one.
Donna?
On Wednesday, June 29th, we have two events at Fort Missoula Regional Park. One is a media-focused event announcing our Sites Silver Award. Sites is a landscape version of the LEED construction, and so we're pretty excited about that. We are the largest developed park and the first park in the region to ever receive this award. And in the evening, early evening, we have a more of a, how do I want to say, quasi-public event, being a celebration for the folks who were instrumental in making Fort Missoula Regional Park happen. And so that would be some of the design staff, contractor staff, certainly Friends of Fort Missoula Regional Park. There were many contributors to the Leaf a Legacy project and the Fort project, as well as at that Leaf a Legacy event, we are going to be honoring some of our park board members that transitioned off the board during COVID. And so we thought it'd be a first time to be able to bring folks back together and recognize some of the employees and some of the board members that have left our organization during the pandemic, and we weren't able to formally thank them. And so basically on Wednesday, the 29th, it's a huge thank you celebration to the many leaders in our community that make places like Fort Missoula Regional Park, which had a massive number of visitors this past rainy weekend, possible. So you're all invited. If for some reason you haven't seen an invite, please let us know, Or if you're wondering if certain people were on the list, please let us know, because obviously there's been some time that's passed, and we're not missing, we don't want to miss anybody intentionally, just trying to get everybody on the list. So thank you.
Thank you, Donna. What's the date again?
It is Wednesday, June 29th. It'll be at Fort Missoula Regional Park at 5:30. And
And John, can you attend?
Yes.
I will be at a funeral in Billings, Montana, so I will not be able to attend.
so, and then we sent our RSVP requests so that we get a proper amount of food and beverages for folks.
Sounds great.
I saw Michael Caldwell over the weekend, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be able to attend.
Awesome.
Any other announcements? Hearing none, is there any comments on the public or guests?
No public comment.
Thank you, Cassie. The first action item is a request to enter equipment enterprise funds. Is Meg on the line?
I think Shirley's going to take that. Is that correct, Shirley?
Yeah, if I can get myself unmuted.
Go ahead, Shirley.
So the Equipment Enterprise Fund was developed a number of years ago to by allocating $2 to $3 per participant into the enterprise fund, and this is to help offset the cost of purchasing equipment. It helps supplement the base budget that we have for equipment when we have to purchase additional equipment in 1 year. The request this year is to purchase $3,756.49. There's an itemized equipment list that was attached to the referral. And we're just requesting the park board approve this expenditure.
Any questions for Shirley? Hearing none, could I get a motion on the floor, please?
This is Margie. I move that the Park and Rec Board approve use of equipment enterprise funds in the amount of $3,756.49 to replace lost, broken, or aged gear.
Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Sam.
Thank you, Sam. Any questions for Shirley?
This is John. I have a question. This is more on enterprise funds in general. Do enterprise funds, when we have requests to use enterprise funds, do the requests have to go through any particular RFP or anything in order to determine the right vendor?
The city, we still follow all of the city regular procurement policy and rules as well as state and federal. So yes, we go through the same process depending on the amounts.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Are you ready for a vote? Cassie, can I have a roll call, please?
Dale,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Margie,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Sam.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thanks.
You're welcome, Shirley. We need to confirm Charles on the open space advisory committee. Donna, could you can you comment on this?
I will. So especially for new members, we've had quite a bit of turnover among park board. And thank you to Sam and Aaron and Charles and Kelly. We're super excited about our board and the renewed energy and increased diversity. So that's been super important. But during this progression, Danny Gunlocks was serving as the park board member liaison to OSAC, Open Space Advisory Committee. And Danny, change in his work and family situation required that he could no longer attend noon meetings, but he, at the pleasure of both the Park Board and the Open Space Advisory Committee, he asked if he could continue to serve on OSAC. So what that did is that meant that the Park Board no longer had a formal representative that was on both. Because Charles is already on OSAC and we are already at our maximum number of OSAC members, we're kind of moving backwards, but OSAC doesn't get to do the appointing. Park Board can do the confirming. So to make it all sound way more complicated than it really is, it was really to try and honor the good work that Danny had done. And in essence, I feel, personally, I feel that having both Charles and Danny connected to OSAC provides great representation for Park Board at OSAC. Why is that important? Open Space Advisory Committee makes recommendations on the acquisitions of open space or expenditure of open space funds and related. We actually do have a more than $500,000 left in a private trust fund. When those lands are acquired, it's really important that the Conservation Lands Advisory Committee, which is a subcommittee of Park Board, or Park Board is somehow involved, because what happens when a land is acquired is this board assumes the responsibility for oversight and management, and often maintenance and development and everything else that goes with those lands. And so what the Park Board liaison does to OSAC is provides that insight from an operational perspective, whether that's conservation lands, lands, related, acquired specifically for high use recreation, like a neighborhood park. But at least you have that liaison paying attention to the long-term costs, the long-term impacts, and whether it's meeting our overarching goals. And so after visiting with Dale on this, and in the board's past decision to honor Danny's request to stay on OSAC, it seemed like a good solution. And in consulting with Charles, by the way, we did talk to him, that a good solution would be to affirm Charles so that this board still had a direct liaison between the two boards.
So we're not appointing Charles, we're confirming Charles as the Park Board rep. Be great to get a motion to that effect, please.
Okay, this is Margie. I move that we confirm Charles Bascon as the Park and Rec representative to the Open Space Advisory Committee.
I'll
Is
second
there-
that.
Thank you, John. Any comments? Any questions?
Charles, how do you
Kathy?
pronounce your last name?
Yeah, did I screw it up?
However you like, but normally Besançon.
Besançon, okay.
I do have one question though, regarding the confirmation. So when is Charles' current term up on OSAC?
Sorry
You're
about
on
that.
mute.
I will, I can look that up while we're meeting. I don't have that right at my fingertips.
And
Charles might know though.
Charles doesn't know.
That's
There's a couple of
good.
more years left, I'm pretty
If
sure.
Charles said something like 7 weeks, 4 days, and 16 hours, then I would have a problem.
It's longer than that, but I will get the numbers.
A lot
for you.
longer than that.
Any other questions? Cassie, call the roll, please.
Dale,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Margie,
Yes,
Aaron,
Yes.
Charles.
I'm not sure I should be voting on this one.
I think you can abstain. And Sam.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you very, very much. So that's the action items.
Okay. So Ryan is here for budget and CIP update, if the board is ready for that.
Ryan is here.
Yes.
Here you are. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your time on this Tuesday afternoon. I did turn in a number of draft documents to the agenda items. I wanted to go kind of focus on two of those. That is a summary of our fiscal year 23 budgets, requests, and then kind of our current active CIP projects. I thought that would be the best use of the time today. And then also, welcome any questions if folks were able to review the individual budget request and CIP documents as well. So I think what I'm going to try to do is share my screen.
So Ryan, while you're doing that, I'm going to give a little bit of a background. So tomorrow at Administration and Finance, the senior leadership team, which are our department heads, will be presenting an update to the city council on the fiscal year 22 strategic goals and looking ahead fiscal year 23 goals. Those goals were around 6 priority areas, the same ones we talked about in our park board strategic planning, community livability, including housing, safety and wellness, organizational excellence, economic, climate, conservation, sustainability, and resiliency, and justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Climate and JEDI are both lens priorities through which we want to do all priorities and all work. We're just in the process of beginning process. The city has created 6 strategic implementation work teams that are focused on each of those 6 goal areas. And around that, or wrapped around that, Park Board just did its initial strategic priority framework planning, which we'll get to next on the agenda. So the budget document is largely, if you will, should be a reflection of our policy and priorities, if that makes sense. And so once we have citywide strategic priorities that aren't just the mayor and the city councils, they really represent, all of the plans that have been adopted, the grassroots efforts, public input, and everything that comes with setting priorities, with adopting plans. And then from there, from a broad 30,000 foot, if you will, city view, we have the 20,000 foot, Park Board perspective of how that looks. And from that, we as staff within the department try and build our work plans and our budget requests to help achieve those strategies and priorities. So it all fits together. And in fact, later today after this meeting, we'll be meeting with our operations team to talk about what does that mean to me when I'm operating a mower or cleaning the restrooms or, whatever it may be. And so really important document. We are just getting to the point of kicking off the budget. The we is the big we, the city, led by the mayor and chief administrative officer. Tomorrow, I don't think that there'll be numbers presented for another week or two. And Parks and Recreation does not do our presentation to City Council until August. We don't receive the state share from the Department of Revenue until about almost mid-August, somewhere around August 12th to 15th. And it's not until those DOR numbers are in, which have a significant impact on our budget because they also relate to property values and property value growth and a whole other bunch of stuff that I am not completely literate in. That gives us the final numbers for the city. And then the budget typically gets adopted sometime mid to late August by the city council. But our fiscal year starts July 1st. and ends June 30th. So we are typically operating for about 2 months before we actually know what our fiscal year 23 budget will be. Now, it's not that big of a mystery because we do carry forward a base budget where we can generally assume that we will at least have that base budget. So that's,
Thank you,
that's
Don. Thank you, Don, for the explanation. Any questions for Donna before we start with Ryan? Were you done, Donna?
yeah, and happy to answer, questions as they come up. The
Go ahead,
budget can
Ryan.
be a rather complicated thing, just because it has so many moving parts, so many funding systems. Even in the Parks Department, there's multiple funding systems and multiple kinds of expenditures. But we'll talk about this again in July in more detail. And Ryan just will share with you kind of it's a look at parks today through the fiscal eye lens, if you will, and what we're trying to achieve. So I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. I'm going to focus here particularly on the Park District number 1, which is our main expending authority budget. It is, it generates assessment revenue on its own, and it also receives a transfer from the general fund as of for expending. And right now that is about a half and half, a half of its own assessment and a half from transfer from the general fund. As Donna explained, there are a lot of moving parts with the budget, and that is something that's looked at every year about where the assessments come from in relation to different regulations and what will the city, how will we steward our funds the best. It's a general fund special. It does carry its own fund balance forward. That's not necessarily totally restricted to parks and Park District only, but the city does its best to let us use those fund balance to meet our goals. And so if we don't expend our annual authority every year, that could grow our fund balance. And there are some, I think it's 5% of our total operating we have to hold in a fund balance. And so this top part that I'm showing kind of shows where the fund balance is in our Park District number 1 and some of our plans to use that in fiscal year 23 to meet some operational goals. We think it's, yes, John.
Just a quick question. You said that the fund isn't necessarily exclusive to Parks and Rec. Does that mean that the city has the authority to remove some funds from the Park District 1 for other things?
They do have the authority to do that. From what I know, it's their intention not to right now, but the authority is there as I understand it.
And I think more specifically, the likelihood would be that we would experience a redux in the general fund component and hold Park District same or actually increase it. And that has to do with state caps on general fund. So the city can only grow its budget at half the rate of inflation over the last 2 years. So if you just think about that in your head, what's happened the last 2 years, half the rate of inflation, those numbers get pretty lopsided pretty quickly when a majority of your budget is spent on staffing, wages, healthcare, and then on 300 accounts, which are purchased utilities, where we have little control of those things. So it makes for interesting budgeting.
Yeah.
So great question, John. The estimation of our fund balance is about 1.7. We recently learned that we had a plan to update sport courts in fiscal year 22, about I think 11 sport courts, some updates to get the asphalt and redo these courts for more usability. Some had expansion capacity as well. We layered some impact fee funds on top of that. But we did receive no bids for those projects just recently, but it was funded out of fund balance. So that next line, I added that back in just as an accounting thing to say, hey, we're not going to expend that. So our fund balance is actually going to carry forward. Though as we go down for our necessary holdbacks, you can see I take that right back out because we were going to hold that to try to rebid, but it's just a placeholder for accounting to ensure that. We also, 2 years ago, acquired 1505 East Broadway through a city council approved, and we're finally getting around to shoring that up and closing out that project, and that required $34,000 of Park District funds. That was approved a while ago. So we just did that accounting now and transferred it to the correct code. So if we take those back out, we're looking about a 1.65 fund balance going into fiscal year 23. Take about, this is a little bit more than the 5% holdback, but 500,000 as a necessary, hey, this is what the minimum our park balance wants to be. And we have about a $1.1 million Park District fund balance going into the year. The next one is kind of looking at how we can use that fund balance to meet operational needs. Part of it is doing that sport court still. And then on some of these, not the first one, and I'll talk about aquatics as a whole in a second. But we're on section 4. Yes, Dale.
Could you make the numbers a little easier to read?
I'll do my best here. Is that helpful?
That's great. Thank you very, very much.
Okay. So as a fiscal year 23 request, we are requesting vans for increasing the recreational fleet to help meet our demands in our recreation programs. This was a request in 22 as well that did not happen due to supply shortages and just the inability to get vans. And so we're working hard to procure vans for fiscal year 23. And so again, that goes into the fund balance because we didn't spend it in 22. And here's another request to say, well, because we had one-time authority last year. And so we need to get that one-time authority again. We had our PROST plan due to capacity. We weren't able to start the PROST plan, and that's a real big priority for us in fiscal year 23. So that's another use of fund balance. In conjunction with the GIS department, do an audit of our current state of where the Parks Department is in GIS, and help the GIS department determine the best path forward. So this would be an intra-departmental collaboration to do an audit and look towards how we can use GIS for their mapping capabilities, for some communication capabilities going forward in the future. And that's what that 35,000 request is for. The park asset management is kind of our deferred maintenance. These include pathway restorations. It includes playground parts that need to be replaced. Includes sidewalk repair. Some big items in there are replacing Sacagawea and Greeno bathrooms as a park asset management annual repair this year. But it includes a lot of contracted services that we can engage with and smaller to help address cyclical maintenance challenges, which is a large in our deferred maintenance challenges. Then there is a potential, and one of our CIP items that you'll see, we indicated some Park District funds for the Northside Park Annex to couple with some impact fee funds to potentially move the needle on addressing neighborhood desires on that Diamond Northside Park Annex area. And that's kind of it will involve more planning in that effort. And then hopefully from the plan, start to do some on the ground work. So that would be a potential use of Park District fund balance as well. I did want to spend a little time talking about aquatics, because aquatics, since its inception, has been an enterprise fund. And this year, since early on, especially after we added the 50-meter pool, aquatics received a contribution from Park District and General Fund to balance. And over the last 10, 15 years, in the increase of supplies, the increase of labor has made that balance grow bigger, especially with the desire and the community need and want to keep fees as low as possible at the aquatics facilities. This year, we determined, hey, to manage this fund the best as possible, we're going to take it out of an enterprise and put it within the Park District #1. And as part of the process, we went through the budget line item by line item to see over the last 15 years, are we still meeting budget? Because since I've been kind of following that and working with it, we have a budget, and what we do every year is try to, do our programming and make the facility as nice as possible to bring in as much revenue as possible and keep safe levels of, required levels and optimal levels for safety in our pools, and try to balance revenue and expenses to the best of our ability. And then what's left over either contributes to lowering the fund balance in that enterprise fund, which was carrying some liabilities, so it's kind of a working capital, or not. Right now, it's operating at about a $300,000 kind of working capital deficit. And as the the cost to run the facility are just increasing, especially in this environment, we determined that, hey, to manage this the best and to really call it what it is it'd be best serviced as the Park District. So we did a net zero balance analysis based on the last 5 years, saw where we could lower some budget items. We saved around $60,000 just in a net zero budget analysis, and are looking now to say, okay, to reinvest into the pools, to provide the resources needed to run the pools efficiently, and to give our pool operators the space to run programs that will bring in revenue. We need to put this in the Park District and provide the necessary revenues to run the pools. So it's kind of the backstories on pools. Yes, John.
Thanks, Ryan. So when I joined Parks Board, Donna, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that the aquatics program was part of the general budget. And one of the things that we noticed at that time was we felt that we could keep a better pulse on what was happening with the aquatics program if we actually started doing some profit and loss statements and tracking the functions and the sustainability of the programs. And so at that time, that's when I could be wrong, but I think we pulled that out, and we've been getting P&L statements and reports from Eric ever since that time. I understand the desire to just move things to the regular Park District, but if that's the case, I would really request and support still being able to track the aquatics program's performance, because I think while we all want to have the most robust program we can at the lowest cost we can, we also need to be realistic about what we can provide as a department, and the community then needs to decide how much they want to support a deficit versus raising prices and trying to make it a net zero.
Thanks, John. So
Totally agree.
The pools opened in 2006, and I think to the surprise of a lot of people, Splash Montana in particular, in the very first summer had a significant profit. If I remember correctly, it was around $230,000. At that time, we did not yet have Park District at all. We were all general fund, and the program became an enterprise fund in order to carefully track the profit loss. And we would do that anyway. We do that with every program that has revenue generation or every special fund project. And so we need to do that for making good management decisions and for communicating to the public what the benefits are. Keep in mind that the old pools, which used to operate for about 10 weeks out of the year, both outdoor, served 33,000 swims a year, and the community was subsidizing them. So think about this, back in 2000 at $135,000 a year. So if you think about inflation, we're actually not that far from the same level of subsidy value, but we're serving 175,000 customers for 12 months, which is really good and a much more diverse. So I think short answer, John, is it never was 100% full enterprise after year one, once we opened the indoor pool, and then 3 years later when we added the 50 meter. What made Splash Montana an enterprise pay for itself entirely was as a standalone water park. But once we added the indoor facility and the 50 meter pool, it much better serves all of our municipal needs. And therefore we went back to having a subsidy, and we've just been tracking it as an enterprise fund. Ryan and my thinking about moving it back to within the Park District, if you will, is something we didn't do with the aquatics program that we did with Fort Missoula, is we did not create a cyclical maintenance fund to build a fund to do the routine cyclical maintenance. So each year, as the facility is aged, we've have to go back to the Park District anyway to fund cyclical maintenance. And so we believe that will actually be more easy. It'll be more easy to track, and we'll have the appropriate maintenance budget, but we will still keep the day-to-day operations separate so we can check that profit and loss.
And as a function of that, or kind of the detail of that, is none of the line items are going away. There will still be the same number. And we're just replacing 5711, which is the Aquatics Enterprise Fund start, with 2513, and it'll still be tracked the exact same way within activities within the Park District. So, I totally agree that it needs to be managed as much as possible like a business, and tell the community benefit story, and as part of that business proposition.
Thanks, Ryan.
So back up to the estimated hold for AQ for fiscal year 21. At the end of the day, after we did the net zero, we about $175,000 to $200,000 budgeted loss. Now, we don't typically track that way in the real world. This year, particularly, is we would like to have more lifeguards on right now. But in lieu of having the head guards or lifeguards, we are having our managers, or out of necessity, having our managers doing the lifeguarding. And what that's really doing is saving some money, ensuring that we meet the safety goals that are paramount at aquatics, but it also, at the end of the day, costs a little less. So, we're budgeted at about a $200,000 loss. That includes an already existing $253,000 a year subsidy or contribution from Park District and General Fund. So this is an addition to that. And so what I'm doing here is just holding that budgeted expected shortfall, although I imagine it will only be around 100,000 for this year. We need to look forward to saying it's not ideal to have the fund balance cover that. It's not an ongoing strategy. But as Donna mentioned, we are also looking to shore up that cyclical maintenance. And so this year, what our ask is to use some of the fund balance to ensure that if we need to cover additional losses, we will, and then add ongoing $53,000 to get our cyclical maintenance back up and kind of categorized as a separate activity within the Parks Department that we know is there and available to use to keep our facilities in the best shape possible. So that's the strategy of using fund balance and ongoing asks this year. The other item that is on there is we are engaged with a consulting firm for an investment grade audit. Excuse me, I should say it's not on here, but this is to reinvest in a lot of the pool infrastructure and pay for it with energy savings over the next 20 years. There's some state statutory limits on that, where you have to be able to pay off by 20 years or you have to put a down payment on it. We're looking at potentially for, I think it's about a $250,000 to $300,000 down payment in there, which could be funded through one of our ARPA asks, which is a reimbursement of lost revenue through the pandemic at the aquatics fund. So a lot of moving parts in the aquatic story this year. I wanted to kind of spend a little bit of time and try to explain the department's thoughts and Donna, my thoughts on how to navigate that. But that is, if we take all of that into account, kind of this section 4 area, consideration to fund balance, that brings our about 880,000, which would put our estimated ongoing, our estimated fund balance at the end of the year at about 770,000. And if we then, say, hey, we have to keep 500,000 of that, we have about, kind of that difference of 270,000. So that's the use of fund balance. I think another big story is the increased wages that we're anticipating for fiscal year 23, which will likely take up a lot of any new assessment revenue. I think we're looking at around a $250,000 increase in just wages for the department wide, which will, yeah, go ahead, Donna.
Sorry, Ryan, I'm probably cutting you off, but will you explain the difference between increased wages and the pay plan impacts? Because it's twofold this year.
Yes. So I think I can. Through fiscal year 22, the city did a lot of work at looking at equity within the city and where possible, a kind of market rate around to attract and retain good employees. I think everyone's aware that that's a common thing that's going on right now and needs to be going on right now. And so, Parks did aggressively increase the wages of our counselors and front desk staff and what we are called as intermittent employees. We also changed some benefit packages so that our intermittent or seasonal non-union employees receive sick and vacation pay now, and are looking really closely at what positions need to be full-time or benefit related, reach that 1,560 hours according to the Affordable Care Act to have. So we're actively looking to try to staff ourselves correctly. And so we added some positions that way, all within the 22 budget. Some of our classified positions either got pay equity increases or were reclassified. We received the first round of our audit citywide of looking at all of our classified positions and coming back and saying these positions are misclassified. That was the first round, and I believe we'll receive another round at the end of July and look at all of our non-union classified pay plan employees to see if they're classified correctly. So a lot happened in 22 that we paid for out of kind of unbudgeted funds. We had vacancy savings within the budget. Those roll into our fiscal year 23 budget, and then those are funded through assessments. In addition to that, there's going to be what's typically referred to as COLA, cost of living adjustments through the non-union and union pay plan, and those also roll into our fiscal year 23 budget. So that's going to increase the Park District assessments related to keeping quality employees around, doing our best to do that. And that's going to be a large portion of our budget increases this year. It's not reflected in our budget asks. It's what gets rolled into baseline, but it will limit how many of our requests get funded, if that makes sense. And Donna, please add any more if I missed the mark on some of it.
And Ryan is spot on, but more, I think from a, organizational excellence and taking care of, talking about our park board strategic plans and taking care of people, trying to get to competitive wages in today's environment is really difficult, especially for short-term workers and what we call entry level, which are your field staff. They're the people who are out there cleaning the restrooms and trimming, hand mowing. They're also the people who are meeting, 8 to 10 hours a day with children 5 days a week in programs or lifeguarding swimming pools. And so what we're trying to do with the help of human resources and city leadership is get to a reasonable, respectable wage for the current environment, and to, as Ryan mentioned, for several of our employees, a pay equity increase was recognized when comparing the same job, similar job descriptions across the city, within the city and across the similar market. We expect more of these to occur in the next year, because the city is just completing its pay plan process and evaluation of all job descriptions. We have not been known as a city for, I would say, good pay, good benefits, but have not been able to keep pace at all. I've seen these ebbs and flows within the Parks Department, especially with our summer and seasonal staff, where sometimes we're kind of at the upper middle. And right now, I think we're in the lower middle, and trying to get back up there because we can't generally increase raises as quickly as the private sector can. And you can imagine we compete with the same tourism industry, the same youth provision industry, the same landscape lawn care industry as everybody else in this valley. And housing is difficult to get to. So a lot more background, but for me, this is a big one on meeting. One of the goals we talked about at length at our May 12th meeting is, how do you take care of employees? And one way you take care of them is you try and get them a reasonable or respectable wage with a baseline of benefits that go with that, so that if they get sick, they're not losing a day of pay.
I think another thing, that's related to that is, our fund balance grows a lot based on vacancy savings. And if we have a lot of vacancy savings, we're not getting to the work that we need to do because we don't have the employees. And so we're in kind of behind cycle, trying to use the fund balance to get work done that maybe we could have gotten done with employees. And so trying to get that pay plan and get that operationally figured out in the annual budget, I think would be ideal. And so now we're balancing kind of both of those as we're moving forward, if that makes sense.
Ryan,
Yeah,
maybe
John.
you were going to mention this, but when I was looking at this before, I saw the ARPA offsets in there, and one of them is for the citywide JEDI specialist. Does that fund the position for the entire city? And if so, is there any consideration from elsewhere in the city's budget to pay for part of that into Park District?
Yeah, that Park District is right now where the expenses are housed, but it is funded by the American Rescue Plan Act. So parks in lieu of HR, it's an HR position, but we're collaborating with HR to run the budget. So the funds come from ARPA. HR and Donna manage it. We make sure that the expenses are coded to Park District, but it doesn't have, if it's funded, it won't be a Park District source fund, if that makes sense. It'll be an ARPA fund. It will take some staff time of myself and my
Sure,
staff.
that's not my
that
question. No, my question was, I mean, if ARPA gave a grant and that funds a citywide position, does the city then account for any share of that wage back into Park District 1 that you can use elsewhere?
It's basically ARPA accounts for the wage.
For the whole
Yeah.
city?
Yes. So no Park
Correct.
District
For the whole
funding is
city.
going into it other than Ryan's time to track the budget for the program.
Yeah, sorry, one more time. That's not my question. I understand
Okay.
that. But if the money that is part of the grant funds the whole city's position, that person is doing work outside the Parks Department, does the city, as part of their budget process, put any money back into the Park District to account for that can be used elsewhere? As maybe if the ARPA grant was for something else, or could be used for something else.
I
Maybe
think-
I think, can I try and answer, Donna?
Sure.
The ARPA that we're referencing to here is the city appropriated 14 million straight from the treasury. So the money is city funds.
Okay,
It's the grant the city got. And this will be just moved over to a Park District revenue so it can match the expenses. Does that
okay,
answer the
thanks.
question?
Yeah, that works. Thank you. Sorry for so many questions.
No, they're good.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, and as we go down, you kind of looking at section 5, the actual budget enhancements. We have contractual and utility increases, which are usually considered baseline adjustments. This year, they're high.
Hey, Ryan,
They're associated. Yes, Dale.
could you expand it and show the dollar amounts?
I believe, yeah, I think so. Let's see, it's hard, then I have to make it smaller, but I think the tax related recommendation is the dollar amounts right
Oh, I
here
got you.
that
I
I'm
got you.
highlighting.
Thank you.
Yep, and okay.
And can you make it
and
just
try
a
to
little
get it so
a tad larger?
Yep.
Great. Thank you very much.
Helpful. So these contractual based on energy costs are higher this year through what finance gave us. And so that's going to eat up a lot of our budget requests as well as our increase in salary and wages. And then 3
Ryan,
through
I need to interrupt
14
one more time.
Mhm.
These are CIP requests.
These are annual budget requests. So these are not CIPs, these are annual budget.
Thank you very much.
And then the numbers 3 through 14 are kind of outside of tax related funding. And so we're asking to increase recreation program supplies based on revenue. I should also mention that we increased the recreation program before we even went into requests. We increased the budgeted revenue by 60,000 to accommodate for the increased wages that it's costing. So we were covering an additional $60,000 in expenses this year, or budgeted ourselves to, and that helps us keep our cost recovery still around that 75% in our youth programming, 75, 80%. And so again, it's trying to keep, what we're actually doing and that budget mirroring it. And, we increase fees in our CANT programs every year, trying to keep them through a variety of means, looking at what competitors are doing, what we think we can do, what the community value of it is, how much it costs us to run the program. So we did increase just to accommodate increased salary and wages, and we increased again by this fee is I think it's $20,000 for our purchase service and supplies for recreation programming. We also increased our budget related to shelters to help with our porta johns and our garbage that's going to go there. That is going to be generated by that. Using the conservation and stewardship mill levy, we're putting funds into the park district for the conservation lands trail ranger that is getting increased this year. And then the FB is fund balance, which we talked about. And then starting at 10 is that city allocated ARPA funding that was directed straight to the city. We're requesting to continue our scholarship and spelled scholarship wrong there, and sliding fee reimbursement. That includes our share of the fund summer scholarship reimbursement, which was funded this year and is helping us give more scholarships out, and our after school and out of school programming on a sliding fee scale. We're asking for that to be reimbursed by ARPA. Our base camp facility to run the old library, the fixed or the utility heating cost to run that. We're asking for that to keep our program fees lows. Like John mentioned, the citywide ARPA specialist and citywide, so we're kind of the house of that budget right now. And then the big one that will be the aquatics revenue. So we go over, that's a potential of about $1 million of lost fee reimbursement. If you look at the budget enhancement request, that's by the general, what's it called, the GFOA, trying to remember, Government Financial Organization of Accountants, I believe. They gave us a calculator to say, hey, here's how you calculate lost revenue. We did that, and that's the $977,000 and 882, 970. And but if we look at our lost revenues plus, just look at our net compared to fiscal year 19 pre-pandemic, that drops to about 500,000. And so we're requesting city council and the city administration, first city administration, to look at, hey, this is our actual loss and fee, that almost 1 million. This is our net loss compared, which is almost 500,000. And as we transition to park district, looking at the best potential for those funds to help shore up the aquatics fund balance, which is in a negative territory right now, before we move it to park district, and look at the potential to help with those down payments. And so those are ongoing, those down payments related to the investment grade audit. So those are kind of ongoing conversations we're having with administration related to kind of the movement in the aquatics fund over the last 3 years while we stayed open, provided great community benefit. That did have a cost. And so that's another ARPA request for this year. Then going down, a big one is aquatic support positions, so we can get our managers managing and developing programs and developing revenue generation and ensuring, we're looking forward and out from lifeguarding. So getting some support position in aquatics to be paid for by some fee increases and some additional park district support. And if you want me to go down, it's kind of a long list. I can keep going, or I know I want to be sensitive of time. And I wanted to talk a little bit about our current CIP projects. So I guess I'll stop here.
What's the likelihood of some of
Go
these
ahead.
being funded or not being funded? I mean, do you have an early read
I would
about?
say,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, Donna may have a better read than me, but my read is once we get past the contractual and the needed increases to ensure our employee, to meet the pay plan, we're going to be in a tough funding environment. I think our increased fee for services ones and our fund balance ones have a good amount. We're hopeful for our aquatic support positions and some of our unfunded amounts to be funded because we have a lot of developed park amenities that have been added but haven't been properly funded. And so we'll be, but I believe this year will be a pretty tough new request environment. Donna, do you have anything to add
And
there?
is it likely that the ARPA stuff will be funded?
Likely, yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and do the CIP?
No, there's a lot of
stuff?
great, will do. Any other questions from anyone else before we move on to CIP?
And would you explain what CIP means?
Sure, I sure will. So this is the capital improvement program. It's a 5-year outlook on capital improvements, which are defined, I believe, anything over $10,000 and will last over 10 years. And our capital improvements, and these are projects that a lot of time run by the landscape architect team, the projects and planning team. And then my team helps with the budgeting and ensuring that, you know, expenses are paid, we're not going over budget and things of that nature. A lot of our grants are run through here, which we'll talk about a little bit, but it's this 5-year plan for the park departments to kind of do our larger projects. Does that make sense on the capital improvement, or any questions on kind of the
Thank
area
you
we're
very
talking
much.
about?
Thank you, Ryan.
We currently kind of organize our capital projects into 5, I believe, different categories. It includes, our PAM is project, our parks asset management, or our deferred maintenance items is what that is. And it's based off of generally our park asset management plan, which was completed in 2014 and made recommendations on what we need to do. Then our open space and CLM projects are another area. Our neighborhood parks, our community parks, our trails, and then urban forestry and greenways is kind of how we our major categories kind of develop by who's going to be leading those projects a little bit. What we're looking at now is our current projects that we be providing updates in fiscal year 23. So these are projects that have appropriations and or are under contract and have dollars expended.
Hey, Ryan, sorry.
Yes,
just
John.
in case people don't have the document open, would you mind just scrolling to the top so you can just give a quick on, this is a Gantt chart and what those colors that are showing on the right mean?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure will. So yeah, and so I just expanded out. This is kind of a way for my team to stay generally informed about where we are, and then update with project managers on a monthly or basis, depending on where the project is, about whether it's not started, whether it's in the planning process, preliminary design process, design and engineering, construction, or complete. And then this is kind of up to date where we are, and I will be asking kind of project managers at an upcoming meeting to say, okay, you know, where are we looking to go here, and you know, what's the general timeline, kind of help us keep in, do we have enough capacity to get all the jobs we want to get done? That's a good way to look at a lot of information kind of quickly, and so that's what we've developed to track active projects. And you know, each one of these goes into very detailed sheets of each project, but this is kind of that summary information to look under dollars under contract. So this approved budget authority is through the city council CIP process, how much budget authority has been approved. We try to make that actual dollars that we have, but sometimes we say to be determined, and it gets approved, but maybe we don't actually have those funds in hand yet, and we're working toward them. And so that's why we have this actual budget, to make sure that, hey, just because it says 995 through the process, do we really have those funds there? And so we try to make sure that that's the case. Then we say dollars under contract, actually expended to date. So, you know, I think the big takeaway is there's a lot of park asset management plans going, though we're struggling with capacity both internally and vendors to be able to meet, you know, the tennis court replacement. I think we're going to have to go out for rebid at the Playfair tennis court because we didn't get bids on that. Pavement preservation is coming through. It's a grant, and so I think we just got that under contract, so that'll be updated soon and will be completed in fiscal year 23. Our sport courts we talked about that we're not under contract yet there, that we have the approval. The restroom repairs, and this is from the park asset management funding, which was approved last year and will need to be approved this year again. That's for Sacagawea and Greeno Parks. Another pavement preservation project that we're getting under contract, that's also grant funded. And then our 50-meter pool liner we're under contract to get that done at the end of this year. And so that should be in the fall. That's that splash on the 50-meter pool. So, you know, and then we just kind of look at, hey, total contract is about our total authority, you know, is 3.1 million here. We only have 370,000 under contract. So we've got some work to do with already in-house. And I kind of set this up as, I think this year, due to capacity, we'll be looking a lot at finishing our current projects. There are some new CIPs, which we'll be devoting to as well, but it's a lot about continuing what we already have appropriations for. Any questions, and I do want to be sensitive of time. I know this goes to 2, but I know I'm not the only thing on the agenda. So Donna or Dale, please let me know if
You're doing good.
If you guys are finding value. Okay. Rattlesnake Dam, you know, this is a FEMA grant run in conjunction with Trout Unlimited. We are just finishing it up and we'll have one more reimbursement through the federal grant to close out that project. Clark Fork Restoration and Reed project. This is one where we have a little bit more under contract than funded because it's for construction management, where we won't be using that part until we go to construction, and we'll have more funds for that. But this is to kind of look at those 11 potential sites. An exciting thing that's come out of this is we're in contention for an economic development assistance grant to potentially put an ADA access at the Brennan's Wave feature in the Clark Fork. We've been working with the Missoula Downtown Foundation to get this done, and that, if it comes through, will be a significant, you know, about $1.5 million grant. I think about 1.2 million in federal funds that are ARPA related from the federal EDA administration, and about 400 to 500,000 of about 400,000 of match funds coming from the Downtown Foundation and city sources. And so that kind of planning got us to a point to apply for that, and we're working through and hopeful that might be announced in July or August. We do have some funds going to continue that planning effort. This is just what's currently under. Waterworks Hill, we're really excited about. I think it's going to be substantial completion in July. We put this placeholder for acquisitions. So far, we spent $925,000. This is related to the Deanstone and the 2018 open space bonds. But we have those that are very opportunistic, and we keep budget authority in there so we can do that. Rattlesnake Dam Phase 2, we'll have a little bit extra capital to roll into Rattlesnake Dam Phase 2, and this associates with some trails around the Duncan, the end of Duncan Drive, and a potential parking lot, and to kind of get the planning efforts going on there. So that's just kind of, once we close out Rattlesnake Phase 1, we'll move some funds to Phase 2 and kind of start it fresh from there. South Hills Spur is the Barmeyer parking lot. We're going to use impact fees, and I believe this will be done in 23 in conjunction with the county to pave the Bar Mile Trail at the base of Patty Canyon. I should say pave the trailhead parking lot, not the whole trail. So it'll still be a nice dirt trail, but the parking lot and a little bit of redesign. a little bit of redesign to fit more cars in and do some erosion control. Marshall Mountain, we're engaged in that planning process. This is funded right now out of the Conservation and Stewardship's mill levy, with the Friends of Marshall Mountain doing some fundraising to help reimburse that fund for that. Neighborhood parks, these are kind of our active ones. And if you look at our CIPs around neighborhood parks, you'll see a lot more in there. They're all in various stages of planning with the neighborhoods and different organizations to try to meet master plan or develop master plan goals. Our Bellevue master plan, this is some cash in lieu in that area. This is separate from the amount that is still available as donations raised by Friends of Missoula Parks. There is additional funds and so, but this is cash in lieu funds to help meet master park goals. The Northside Park Annex is impact fee funded to help plan that area. And we talked about potentially adding 50,000 of park district fund balance to help that effort in 23. Syringa Park Phase 2. This is monies from private sources that is in here, and to forward that, there is additional fundraising goals to meet the next potential features out there, progressive jump line features out there if that's moving forward. But this is where we're at right now. Redfern Park, where we have a generous collaboration with the HOA out there and impact fees to replace the playground. We're moving forward with that in fiscal year 23. Bonner Bandshell, we are working on securing a private donation of 35,000 to, this is one of those one where we have the authority for 140, but really we only have 105, and this is a debt service financed project. So we're looking to finish that MOA and move forward with ADA improvements on the Bonner Bandshell. And then Westside Park Phase 2 is going, we're under contract for a lot of items, and that's moving full steam ahead. And we're hopeful that we'll have some additional funds to help with some ongoing programming at the Lowell Community Center, the neighborhood community center there. It's kind of active in our neighborhood parks right now. Community parks, we do have impact fees to start a master planning process out there. It's all about getting capacity and where that sits in priority to get done for that. Community, the current Center for Recreation Creativity, we have made it to an adopted conceptual master plan from City Council. And so we are now kind of actively looking for best ways to move forward with that project. This would be 80,000 square foot expansion to the currents facility. And there's a lot of moving parts associated with that. We would have to find a new home for 100 Hickory as part of the LWCF, the Land and Water Conservation Fund kind of covenants around that. And so, you know, that's little in a holding pattern and looking for the funds to achieve those goals there. Fort Missoula Regional Park ponds, batting cage triangles. This funds that we have right now are impact fee related. And, you know, we do have the Knife River, the former Knife River site with the ponds on it, kind of to the west and south of Fort Missoula Regional Park. We also have the county lands right next to headquarters, was the former site of batting cages. And then there's kind of the post-sighting triangle section of the park that are all underdeveloped towards park planning. So, you know, those are the areas that we're looking forward and looking for potential to include the post-sighting trail improvements and some type of transportation granting source, but we're kind of keeping our eyes on that right now. Higgins Bridge Park restoration. This is where we're putting Northwest Energy funds related to park access permits while they're doing work and moving the poles. Also, park access for MDT. We get paid for that to restore that area once that project's done. We are almost done with Karis Phase 1. So we're super excited about that. Go down and enjoy. And we're looking at kind of a CIP coming up to reactivate the under Bear Tracks Bridge, where in conjunction with the Missoula Downtown Association and the Missoula Downtown Foundation, and also looking at restoring some trip hazards in the brickwork under Karis right now. So we're moving forward with that. We talked about the 50-meter pool liner. You know, we talked a little bit about the comprehensive master plan. That's what we're going to re-ask for at $175,000 to re-engage that to update our 2004 master park plan. You know, I think we talked about that also at our strategic planning. And this is at 1505, 1515 East Broadway. Currently, the developer that was looking to develop that area has that project on hold. But once that area is developed, there's probably going to be the timing to do the trail improvements at that time. And so we're just keeping an eye on that as that develops. So kind of other active projects, or, you know, at least that have some funding appropriated with it, are Milwaukee Trail Grove to Mullen. That would be the crossing of the Clark Fork River from the Orchard Home area over to the Septepquane or Mullen area. We have some funds from 2006 open space bonds to complete some planning for that work. And it would cost, the construction of it would be considerably more than that, but we hold on to those funds. And so for planning efforts, conservation lands and trailheads, this is $37,000 to update current conservation land trailheads in association with the conservation lands management annual operating budget. And so these are placeholders here. This is 2018 open space bond funding. And again, 2018 open space bond funding for commuter trail expansions. MRA, Missoula Redevelopment Agency, is looking to do some lighting on the Bitterroot trails within the Erd sections this year. So that we're really excited for, to work in connection with them to get that accomplished. But this is also, you know, where we can find leverage for different grants. These can be good matching sources, or where we need to address expansion in our trail network. And we're keeping our eyes out on grants to the best of our abilities as it comes out from the public infrastructure bill as well. And then our urban reforestation. Urban forestry did recently receive a SUFFER grant, the state. It's SUFR. I'm not going to get the acronym right now. That is not included in these funds, but is kind of a leverage on open space bonds to meet some of our equity goals in forestry. And so, you know, we have a lot of active projects going on for relatively, I mean, we're a large department, but this is a lot of projects in my view, on top of a lot of the annual operations that we do. You know, and if we had time and you want to look at some of our new ones, I'm happy to, you know, look at what's coming at us and what we're trying to prepare for in addition to these. If
Hey,
that's
Don, how
worth our
much time do
today.
you want for our strategic plan? You're mute.
Maybe 20 minutes?
So Ryan, why don't you keep going?
Okay. So yeah, so that covers, you know, kind of full out here, you know, and I guess I will, you know, we have around 13 million and you know, funds available for capital projects. We have about 7 million under contract, and so we're about halfway there with those contracts. So kind of just gives you a very top line picture of we're busy. We have more to get under contract. You know, so and you know, that kind of feeds into our requests to additional parks planners potentially paid for out of some development fees to keep up with it. You know, so as you look at kind of as, you know, our workload increases, you know, we kind of look at, well, this is what we already have on our plate. And then we
So
go
before you-
to kind of what has come.
Any
Sure.
questions? Any questions for Ryan regarding the stuff we just covered? Donna,
Just a little bit more background for the board. Over the years, we've tried to give you a complete picture of the requests and to the best of our ability in the short amount of time we have with you, how we got there, why those are requests. We prioritize things through various criteria, but all focused on those major strategic goals, including the park board's strategic priorities. Safety, of course, always plays a critical, number one, is it a safe facility? Two, if we can provide some maintenance or renovation, restoration to it now, do we save money later? So, so applying climate is more than just thinking about the word climate. It's about long-term sustainability, viability, resiliency of the system. Does it provide for resiliency or adaptation for people? Same with JEDI. If we have two projects or more, like we have several, where are the partners, where are the outside funding, or is this a neighborhood that's been underserved and therefore it is automatically a high priority for us? And so we do use the JEDI lens in those ways, especially around socioeconomics at this point. One of the reasons that the master park plan is so important to us is the current one was completed 18 years ago now, and generally plans aren't intended to last that long, more like 10 years. And so much has changed. We were looking at urban sprawl at that time, and now we look at growth inward. We're post-recession, post-pandemic, and we have a very different global world as it relates to climate and equity. So the input from the board can be in many ways. You can look at how we as a group of staff ranked budget items and say, I just disagree with that. That doesn't fit our priorities. You may have questions on different projects, budget items and CIP, because obviously Ryan could spend a week with each of us trying to explain the details behind each item. But your input's important. The other thing in July that we'll ask you for is, do you agree or affirm the budget requests and the CIP requests? Because City Council does often ask us, what did Park Board say about the order of your priorities? And the last thing I'll leave you with is this. We often have far more needs, requests, and when I say needs and we, try to remember that there's 18 to 20 neighborhood councils, and then there's a number of sports associations, special use groups, homeowners associations, and most of them are looking for some way to partner with parks to increase the value or benefit to their group, organization, association, or neighborhood. And so what we try and do is find our way through all of that and keep projects going forward. And I think West Side Park is one of those projects that kind of emulate what we try and do through a JEDI lens, through climate lens, through safety lens, and in concert with multiple partners, which by working together, we were able to find significant outside funding. Same with CARES, very different partner groups, but opportunistic too. So the other thing we do as a department is get as many projects and programs shovel ready as we can in the event there are grants or foundations that we can access.
thank you, Donna.
Hey, Dale.
John,
This is John. In our last meeting, I asked if we would have an opportunity to participate in the ranking. And I know that that's something that we've done off and on in the past. It might be worthwhile if we as park board members individually review these new CIPs, and just if we have any comments at the July meeting to add for what we would consider to be maybe one ranked too high or too low, and then have a short discussion on that. I think that would be beneficial.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if anyone, has questions or wants to dive into more detail, I'm available, and I should say I will be out for the rest of this week, but I'm available for the next 2 weeks. And so happy to chat more.
How do we handle this last year? John, did we actually have a vote? Do you remember?
I think we voted to approve staff recommendations.
Yeah.
We can definitely carry this forward into an action item for July if the board pleases.
That'd be great.
And then we can start with discussion, and then you can vote whether to affirm or change order. And that is fine because we don't present to council till August.
That's great. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Ryan, are you done, or do you need a few more minutes?
Could run through these, the new ones. There's 9 projects quickly, or do you want me to call it good, Donna? I'm good to call it good if you guys want to. I mentioned many of them, and I could probably do it in 5 minutes here. Just to give
Go
you
for
a
it.
quick scan. Okay. Clark Fork River access. I mentioned this. This is a potential grant of $1.2 million from the EDA. It would be in partnership. 150,000 would come from the Missoula Downtown Foundation, and currently we're asking for ARPA city ARPA funds for the city match. If that does not happen, it would be open space and park district and potential some ERD funding from MRA to meet that 155. But this is to get that ADA access point and amphitheater seating at Brennan's Wave. So excited about that opportunity. Aquatics revenue generation. This is mostly for fiscal year 23, is to look at covering the pond portion of the of Splash Montana, because we do a significant amount and it's not currently covered in the McKinstry project. We're also looking at engaging a consulting firm to kind of look forward on an additional feature. It's always been part of the plan to add features or upgrade features. And so based on consultant, we may look at adding some feature upgrades, whether that means upgrading the shallow pond features or a new smaller slide, and then look potentially out a couple of years if it makes sense to add a larger feature. So this is about in the near term, upgrading some of the current features to give some more spice and new activities. They have not been updated since we've opened, and then look a little bit further out with some consultant help to look at what features would help and continue creating an attraction there. So that's moving forward. Parks and Northside Parks and Trails implementation, talked a little bit about this. This is about the reactivation under Bear Tracks Bridge as a kind of a continued next step in implementing that downtown parks master plan and the North Side and Trail master plan. So this would be doing that, activating Bear Tracks Bridge in conjunction with Missoula Downtown Foundation, and also looking at restoring the brickwork so we reduce trip hazard liabilities at Karis Park. That's a big part of this one as well. Rattlesnake Dam Phase 2, we talked about that. That's kind of a carry forward, and starting to look at potential parking lot at the end of Duncan Drive and a trail around the substation, and kind of the next step there. The Flynn Lowney area is a big one that is in a planning stage right now with funds from MRA. This is really from the trestle on Broadway that MRA has a CIP to turn that into a pedestrian bridge all the way to the California Street Bridge kind of on Broadway. That area, it's adjacent to downtown Lions Park. It includes a large portion of the Ron's River Trail. It includes where the Flynn Lowney ditch goes out into the Clark Fork. And so we are looking at a kind of a large planning effort with West Broadway Island, kind of the erosion. If anyone looks on the south bank of the river by the Civic Stadium, there's an erosion issue that needs to be fixed in a relatively short time frame. Hopefully we'll get lucky this year. Um, and so it is a large project. This is the initial planning effort. Trout Unlimited is also engaged, and Fish, Wildlife and Parks is engaged with the city team in this early planning effort for this area. So Morgan is a great contact for this. We're excited about that one. Milwaukee Trail downtown sections. And so this is a little bit of a placeholder as development gets, increased in density in the downtown areas. It might lead to opportunity to improve the Milwaukee Trail through that corridor. And so this CIP just helps us keep ready for any improvements that we might be able to do. That might be river access improvements along with trailway improvements. But as development is happening at a rapid rate, we want to kind of keep on the pulse of it and look for opportunities, especially as electric vehicle use and other multimodal use is picking up. We really need to get from those 10-foot trails to those 14-foot trails, similar to by the Clark Fork Natural Area now. White Pine Park, this is another one in conjunction with MRA, and this is when the development happens where the existing White Pine Park is right now. It is to move that park in an adjacent area per the plan, and this is to help us have the funds to do that. It's another one in conjunction with MRA, and then looking for funds to build amenities out in White Pine Park once the land is secured. That might be coming up quick as well. Nikpata Park is doing some survey work through a city neighborhood grant program to get us to the next step to get to a master plan out there. But the survey work will get done this year through a city neighborhood grant program. And then conservation lands trail upgrades. We have that 37,000. I moved it over, and we're looking at grants and potential donations to continue updating and getting kind of a unified look at our conservation lands trailheads. That includes updating kiosks and kind of having you are at a City of Missoula conservation trailhead, and these are conservation lands, and so getting uniformity in there. And so we'll be using some open space bond funds and looking for a match for that. And those are kind of our upcoming new looks. And then there's an out year section that kind of looks further out. A lot of our neighborhood park planning is in an out year that, they're still in development. And so what is attached to this, the documents you have are updates, which we generally went over, this new one, which we looked at, and then the one that we haven't talked about is out year projects. So encourage you to look at those as well and provide feedback to me, and again, we can talk about it more as an action item at next month meeting. Appreciate all y'all's time and energy and thoughts here.
Any
Yes, John.
questions?
One more question. Back on the aquatics, when I read that, I saw something about, I saw the roller, which makes complete sense to me, and adding the water features. There was something in there about a new parking spot, and it was $30K for a new spot.
That is a spot for the roller, I believe, and that's in everything included. So
Gotcha.
the roller will need a place to live because
What's
it's kind of
what's the
built
roller?
into the current. The
Well,
roller was where the cover for the pond will be. And so we have to roll it up at the end of each night and then be able to, discharge it at the, we have to get it in and out.
Thanks,
Does that
Ryan.
make sense, John?
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions for Ryan or
No.
Donna regarding this? Hearing none. Thank you very, very much. So let's go. Donna, would you take us something on the strategic planning update?
I will. So on May 12th, most of the park board was able to attend a workshop that was facilitated by Ginny Tribe. And I'll share the document that came out of that. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a final. And because there was a couple of people that had to leave early, and And then one of our board members was unable to attend throughout because of work, unexpected time scheduling stuff. I wanted to make sure that everybody knows this is in draft for sure. So if you recall, we came up with a vision of healthy parks, healthy people, but that actually belongs to the National Park Service. I'm going to just take a wild guess and bet that it's copyrighted, and I'm not sure we want to exactly use the same one as the National Park Service. So for now, as a holding place, we have healthy community, healthy places, healthy people. Get it? It's very, very similar. Missoula Parks and Recreation assures sustainable parks, built environments, open lands, and green spaces, supporting healthy and resilient people. Parks and Recreation engages and is connected to and with the community, its employees, in delivering services and programs. We talked about a land acknowledgement. Certainly there could be an updated one, the one that I have inserted because we sort of workshopped one in one of our small groups. But this is the one that the Cultural Committee had already approved for use in the Parks and Recreation brochure. So I pulled it over as at least a holding place. And then we had guiding principles. The board had guiding principles that we ended up with. We believe that accessibility is critical in connecting all parts of the community to its parks, recreation opportunities, and open lands. We believe that diverse experiences should represent the diversity in our community and help people grow through new activities, environments, relationships. We believe that justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion should be evident in all our plans, decisions, and actions.
Hey,
We
Donna,
believe-
you don't need to read this. We can read, we can read it.
Okay, thank you.
So keep going.
So the guiding principles are before you, and it led to 4 strategic goals. Applying the JEDI and climate lens in the delivery of programs and services and care of facilities and lands. A lot of emphasis and discussion went around employees' experience and having a safe workplace culture and respectful compensation with appropriate tools and training to be successful in the work. Purposeful partnerships, a lot of good discussion on what a purposeful partnership and intentional engagement looks like. And then standard operating procedures that are well planned, understood, and communicated. And then also we're able to recognize the impacts of growth, and that we should also look at succession planning. So that was the product that came out of that day-long workshop. And what I'm looking for from the board is either discussion, could be edits, it could be, okay, now that we got to read what was all there, we want to take it forward to our July meeting and have a deeper discussion, whatever the board's pleasure.
I'm curious what kind of reaction the board had. I had to leave the meeting early, so I'm not sure. I missed the very end of it. So any comments about the existing draft?
Yeah, I do. So first of
Charles.
all, this looks great, Donna. Congratulations on getting this sort of high level view of the strategic plan. I think it captures what we talked about. I was going to note that it's good to develop land acknowledgement statements with those tribes that may have inhabited the area in the past. Maybe it's sufficient to have this cultural committee take that role, but I wonder if there's more that could be done to just ensure that it reflects what tribal people would like to see in that statement. So that's my first comment. And then the second one is in the list of guiding principles. Again, I think you've captured everything we said, but the order I think is important as well. I would personally like to see the second to last bullet, the one on We believe the department's greatest resource is its employees. I'd like to see that either first in that list or fourth. So we either start with that and then list things like accessibility, diversity, JEDI, or we do accessibility, diversity, and JEDI first, and then greatest resources employees. But just to try to move that up higher in a logical place, I think is important.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Any other comments? Has Ginny worked on this?
Yeah, this is 95% Jenny's work. The biggest edit that we made as staff was to add the land acknowledgement that we drafted 2 years ago. And then with the Salish Kootenai Cultural Council. And then we defined weird. The last we believe statement was, we believe, it was really short, and it was about keeping Missoula weird, because that was the comment that was actually made in the meeting, but we felt for a public facing document, we had to explain what we meant by weird.
Absolutely. And Sam or Aaron or John or
I have a comment.
Kelly?
I also think that the land, this is Kelly, sorry, that the land acknowledgement is very important. It's kind of interesting that you're now seeing it come back more, when I feel like it initially should have never went away and not being addressed. So I think that acknowledging that, yes, this is the home to the Salish, and that just that recognition of, that and how we don't live here anymore. So land acknowledgement. I just went out to the Confluence this weekend, and they had up signs of Salish language that I can't speak myself, but I texted my brother to ask him what it said. So I think that's also very important.
Kelly?
But other than that, I think it looks fabulous from what we all started with to where it came together.
Is this a thing that we need to, like, what's the next steps here? I would personally
Well-
love the opportunity to like spend more time thinking about it and return to it. I think you suggested in the July meeting.
Thank you, Sam. For that exact reason, I put it under discussion so that the board would not be forced to take a formal action. I always think it's important. And also following precedent, from Dale's leadership, is to give the board time to kind of drink it in and make appropriate edits. It seems like bringing it forward to the July meeting, and happy to make some of the edits that are being requested here, so that the next time you look at it, it's the next version.
Okay, let's do that.
And if we had like thoughts in the ensuing month, is that something we should be like communicating over email in that time, or just bringing it to the next meeting?
I think my personal feeling is so that this is available to you now, right, through your agenda. If you have more grammatical, things that don't change the content or the meaning, if you could send those to Cassie, we will edit in a track change document so everybody can see everybody's edit.
That's great.
And then any content change, you're welcome, and we'll just add that to maybe to the bottom of the page. And then when we all come back together in July, Cassie will be the only one that'll have a compilation of individual comments. You will see that attached to the action item in July. So then you can talk about it together as a group, as a board at that time.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other
Yeah.
comments? Aaron or John?
No, not at this time. Thanks, Dale.
So can we move on? Hey, Aaron, do you have or Don, do you have a report on the HERE program, the BIPOC? status?
I can report a bit about it at the moment. And Donna, if you can maybe help where there are some holes in that as well. So in terms of the working group for HERE Montana and what decision was made based on response from the community, the participants and the community of the HERE Montana group has decided to separate from Parks and Rec, but will still explore opportunities for partnerships in the future, but move themselves to be a social enterprise from here on out. So they will still be a functioning group. However, they will no longer be under Parks and Rec.
And does that mean the entire city of Missoula or just Parks and Rec?
I believe it's the entire city of Missoula. Yeah.
Thank you.
And didn't Alex leave his job so that he could become the head of that?
Yes, he did. So that is why there's an opening in the DEIJ specialist position now.
So I totally respect that and get that, but Donna, I'm curious what impact that will have on the department and the department's programming, because the department's programming is affected by the community, whereas this is an independent group that can basically make whatever decisions they want. So will there be a new opening within the department, or how is that going to work?
I don't have a definitive path yet. My first actions along with our recreation staff has been to support the HERE Montana user group. It's a very unique group in that it's BIPOC residents, but it is not the first time that a group who has participated under Parks and Recreation leadership hasn't formed its own organization. And so a lot of times that's a sign of success, or that the group can do things better as a standalone program than they felt that they could do, under the umbrella of government. That doesn't change our department or our employees' commitment to the work. What we did agree to with HERE Montana leadership is to honor and not compete with the programs they had planned for the summer, and to support them in the fullest way we can. And so what we are doing is we'll actually be transferring just over $16,000 in funds, which is the entire amount that we had collected over the course of a year to support the program in the first place, and not recover any of the costs that were expended prior to March 2022 on the program. The other thing we agreed to do is we're providing no cost access to a certain number of shelter uses, guide uses on city public lands for this season, because we think the best thing we can do to help HERE Montana stand up on its own is, every organization needs a couple of years to build up its funding and its budget and its staffing. And so what we're trying to do is give it the best possible leg to stand on to start. At the same time, we are working, we continue to work, and we're building more and more programs with Soft Landing. We continue to see an expansion of our programs and our day camp programs and all of the camps and family-related programs, and quite honestly, the diversity we're seeing in the facilities at both of the pools, plus the spray decks and in the parks, has been excellent. So we do look to continue to expand programs. We've got active, in addition to the work with BIPOC, we also have a lot of active programming developing with Western Montana and LGBTQIA. We're working with Missoula Aging Services. And so Summit Independent Living continues to be a very strong partner that we continue to work with. And there's several additional that we will continue to build program with, and wherever those programs can best grow and develop. We've always seen our role is filling the niches, getting folks started, helping provide the instructors, and where those programs cannot stand alone or might stand better with our support, we do that. And I think it's been a good learning experience too for our team, and just kind of, because it was super exciting and valued to have the Here Montana program under the Parks umbrella, but we absolutely honor and respect the wishes of the group.
Thanks, Donna. In terms of providing no-cost access, will you do that like formally through the Partners in Parks program so that it's not showing favoritism to one group, or how are you going to handle that?
Well, what I shared with the leadership of Here Montana is when we provide recreation program services, those services are still paid for in some way. Meaning there has to be a dedicated budget line item, and there is actually, the license plate sales. There are a number of donations that Parks and Recreation receives, and writing grants solely for scholarship. And so that's why we tend to commit to a sliding scale fee. It's one of the reasons I felt it important to get Here Montana as much funding as we could to help them with the startup so they could begin to build an internal scholarship program. That's what most of our partners do with all of the other user groups. And then if they would need assistance, it could still come back through Partners in Parks. There probably wouldn't just be a blanket, everybody comes free, because that would be difficult for us to do across the community.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Donna. So going back to the draft strategic plan, have you envisioned incorporating any of the old 2019, 2021 language from the old plan into the new plan?
I have not specifically. I visited a bit with our facilitator that we had on that, and her opinion, based on listening to all you and the fact that she was also involved prior, was that the new plan you developed is pretty encompassing, though much more concise, but that sometimes that conciseness or brevity is a good thing in understanding what the plan is and still giving us enough flexibility to build partnerships wherever we see helps move the dial on our efforts around climate and JEDI and other goals.
So I do have a request. Board members, you might want to look at the 2019-2021 plan and see if you think anything should be carried forward to the new plan. And in particular, I'd love to hear your opinion, Charles.
Can we make sure, maybe Cass can make sure she sends that out to everyone?
Thank you. Any other items that come before the board?
Bill, I have two.
Go for it, John.
In last month's meeting minutes, we agreed that we would get a report this month back on efforts for the sprinkler head adjustments at Playfair when it concerns volleyball. That's the first question.
That is in Link's report, and they completed the work.
Awesome. And then my second one is I was just asked to share some comments from the women's soccer recreational league community. Due to the damage at Fort Missoula Regional Park, they got bumped to the turf fields. And I know that they're letting the fields rest certain days to try to recover. The comments were that the masters women, if you will, felt that it was very difficult to play on the turf fields because of the conditions, particularly on their knees and the way the ball moves. And they request that in the future, if teams do have to get moved to the turf, if it could rotate or something so that they weren't always on the turf. They were not happy about getting moved to the turf, and I got a complaint.
Thank you, John. And just so the board knows, a little bit of background. I think what we're referring to is the synthetic turf.
Yes.
We
Sorry.
did just refill the crumb rubber, which means the attenuation or the forgiveness is at a high point right now. Just so you know, I'm not second guessing the way, you know, the experience that the adult women's soccer players had. But the reason the fields were damaged is that goes back to our turf working group program and criteria, and it's extremely, there's a recognition, if you will, an acknowledgement, an agreed upon guiding principle that parks will not stop a tournament that's regional, major regional or international in nature because the amount of travel experienced, unless there's a safety issue or we do not believe we can recover the turf. Now, this one was on the edge. There was a lot of rain this weekend. But when you have teams who have traveled or, 2 days to get here, it is really difficult to cancel their tournament. And the thing with most field sports is the fields have to become atrocious before they really become unsafe.
Really quick, just to comment on John's, comments that he received. I am one of the recreationalists on that female soccer team, or a female soccer team that took place just this past spring. Of the 7 persons on my team, 4 of us were all injured with knee injuries, myself included. So just another statistic of how small our team was and how many of us were taken out within the first 4 games. So yeah.
So we'll do everything we can. I mean, the other option, and this is, I see Shirley's online, so we can carry that forward, and we can also do evaluation questions, is that we just cancel games for that week. If we don't have a safe place and the synthetic turf is undesirable, then we don't really have an option but to cancel or postpone, unless Shirley has another solution.
Shirley.
We're going to need about 3 to 4 weeks to rehab the fields that were, I'm not going to call them damaged, but they were well used. And we need to do a lot of aeration and reseeding to bring them back. The only other option we have is Playfair. So I could ask Brian if we could move the women's games over to Playfair. I know there's still play at Playfair, but that's one possibility.
Thanks, Shirley.
Any other questions or comments coming before the board? Thank you, Ryan, for your excellent presentation. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion passes. See you next month, you guys.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Nice to see everybody's
Take care,
face.
everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.